Hello, fellow travelers, and welcome to the Traversing the Stars podcast. How are my loyal listeners? Thank you for your continued support. And remember to click that subscribe button, everybody. We have an amazing show for you all because returning to the mothership is David Hewlett. You know him as Rodney McKay on Stargate Atlantis. He now stars in C and Cabinet of Curiosities. Now come aboard as we go traversing the stars. Hello, Mr. Hewlett. Thank you for being the returning champion to the Traversing the Stars podcast.
That's it, a returning champion.
It was an honor to talk to you the first time, so I really appreciate that you've come back.
Oh, God, a pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Yeah. You know me. I love my geeking out.
Oh, we're going to geek out today over C and Cabinet of Curiosity, so I'm ready to go. And it's because of you I started watching C, and that is a good show.
Oh my God, it is, and it just gets like of course, because I show up, but it just gets better and better and better. I mean, like it's just I love the way it started. It starts as almost like an art piece, like it's like this beautiful, like what if type thing.
Yeah.
And then by the time you get to season 3, it's just pure freaking action. It's just and it's just craziness. And I love the way Tropper's added this. So Jonathan Tropper, who's the showrunner, writer, and stuff, and just this sense of humor to stuff, like the crazy queen, little things in the background and stuff. Oh, it's just it's so much fun. It was just an absolute joy to work on. It's truly, I think, like it's like Stargate level enjoyment. It was where I was in the process of making this thing.
Well, I mean, there's some great characters like Harlan is a great addition. He's
oh
a great
my
sense
God,
of humor.
fantastic, isn't he? Yeah. He's just as well, not, I mean, he's a complete cat on the show, but in real life he's just as charming and bloody handsome bastard.
I mean, I really do like it. I kind of like thought about it. I don't know if this is appropriate or not. It's Game of Thrones with blind people, and it's really entertaining.
That was probably the pitch. I mean, what's interesting about it is that I think it started as this kind of like study and what would happen, and then you suddenly go, how would it happen? Like there's a bunch of stuff, like all of a sudden there's just things you just didn't consider. You know what I mean? Like there's a for me, one of the telltale scenes for like when I was like, oh my God, this is different. Was there's this massive, I've just blown up everybody near the beginning of I think it was actually in the first season, the first episode of season 3. And there's like and then it was like written, like he takes in the, he's standing there taking in, Tormada's taking in what he's destroyed. And really the only thing you can do is just smell it, because it's like it's so loud that you wouldn't hear, like it would be ringing and be like this terrible tinnitus type thing. And of course you can't see, you could feel the vibrations, it just completely changes the way you react, because I didn't realize you just take for granted just how much of it is, how much of our existence is entirely based on our ability to see, you know what I mean? So people who, the unsighted or the sighted, is whatever the unsighted are it's a completely different way of approaching the world, and it's fascinating. It's also, look, it appeals to me as well, because my nerd like interest in how things work. I found myself trying to figure out Braille and stuff, and we did these classes, in movement classes they called them, where they basically would put a nightshade over your eyes and make you do the stairs and things. But it was amazing, just those system, how meticulous you have to be in organizing things on a desk. You don't reach out to see what's there, because you would pull things towards you.
Yeah.
So you slowly map out a table and stuff. And then of course by the end of season 3, where they're into all the action, it's a bit like yeah, you've done that already, let's just get to the stabbing and the killing and the blowing up stuff. You know what I mean? So.
But I mean, I think it's fascinating. And as we were saying about the scene where he's blowing everybody up, that person has never,
like every scene, but yeah,
right. Like he's never seen what an explosion looks like. He has just to imagine the chaos that's being caused.
He's feeling the air being sucked out of his lungs or knocked out of his lungs. He's like and they've got this incredible sense of touch and hearing that have just been tuned by millennia of us being reliant on them more than sight. And there's just this glee, there's this wonderful sort of childlike glee. He really is like, you could almost he's almost an evil McKay from Stargate. I mean,
Yes.
he takes a joy in this. And I think that was what I was so appealing to me, when it came up, was just this idea that, like, if you just focus on how cool this stuff is, yeah, it's really cool. If you don't mind the fact that it's killing hundreds or thousands of people, it's still really cool. I mean, there's, but it's just trying to get into that, getting into that, the glee of it all is just so evil. It's, I mean, it's very sort of Nazi scientist, basically. It's that kind of,
Now, as an actor, normally when you're acting a role, a lot of it has to do with actually seeing the person you're playing off of. You're looking at them, you're reacting to their reactions. But once again, as playing someone who is blind, Tormada, you are not supposed to be able to see any of that stuff. So as an actor, how does that change your acting approach when you're not supposed to be reading the cues of your actor?
It's fascinating because I mean, I feel like we cheated because we had this movement team that was just extraordinary, led by Joe Strachey, or Stretchy, I never get his name right, Joe. And they were ruthless. If there was anything they go like, hey, you responded to, you nodded, or you made a movement to something, to point, to gesture. There's lots of little things you do just instinctively, especially me with my waving my arms around stuff. So in a way, I feel like it was easy because you had a team keeping an eye on that all the time for you. So that made it a lot easier. But it was amazing how you just found yourself, you just start reveling in it after a while. You just start, once you get into that sort of unsighted, once you you're taking in the world without actually, I find myself doing it just talking to you. You get this sort of almost like a glaze. And there were two different ways you could do it. They taught you. You could look at your two fingers and then try to keep them in your sight as you put your hands apart. Or there's my favorite one, which was the lost in thought. I was like, oh, I could do lost in thought. That's where you're like looking up for an answer, but not finding it. Was the other one. So that was the way so you'd see some people would start a scene by doing this stuff or something similar. And I would always start going like, I wonder if, and then that was off to the races. The weird thing was then I then went immediately back, not immediately. Yeah, basically. Yeah, pretty much back to back into the Cabinet of Curiosities, where all of a sudden I was sighted again. And I found myself doing scenes, not looking at people. And then I'm like, oh shit, no, I'm sighted in this. I have to, so it really has, I think as an actor, it's amazing because you start going like, oh, there's so many other ways that you could be interacting with people. And just the idea of just sort of like, I love the way when someone wanted to hand something, you don't just go, hey, over here. It's like, there were little finger snaps, and I love my finger snaps anyways, but finger snaps and the echolocation, all that kind of stuff. It's just, there's so many cool things. And I am also a big fan of assistive tech as well. So I'm fascinated by what, the tools that they come up with. I mean, I would say that, humankind is almost defined by our use of technology. So the way that we, or these, the unsighted in the world of C have created their world is just fascinating. Like the ropes, so the way they could just put their weapon up and they've got a rope to take them down the main street. They've got the knots to sort of, instead of writing, I thought was fascinating as well. Yeah, there's just some really, really fun stuff. But again, you always get into these situations with a show where, whether it's a medical show or whether it's a show about stock trading, whatever, there's always elements that are going to have to suffer the reality to make the show happen. So there's definitely a few things where I realized we had to, that there's certain concessions made just for the sake of storytelling. But honestly, they were really, really good about keeping us honest on that stuff. And also what I also love is by season 3, we're bringing in a lot of unsighted performers or partially sighted performers, right?
Really?
Which at first I was like, how the hell do you, like, how, if you're not sighted, I don't know what you do on set. Like, I mean, sets, producers joke about not coming to set because they trip over things. I mean, there's cables, there's this stuff everywhere. So, you suddenly find yourself rethinking, what are the, what are the accessibility issues with the set? I mean, and also, how do you act for the camera when you can't see the camera? You know what I mean? Because so much of it is not looking at the camera. They say that the key to acting is not looking at the camera, but the reality is you're constantly aware of that camera the whole time. You got to be, because you got to know where it is for for everything going on. So how do you negotiate the set if you don't have that? So that was fascinating to see how that was done and how it was set up, and that we took the time, that Apple took the time to incorporate people who truly couldn't see into the fold. And it was wonderful. And I mean, they were having so much fun too. We were all, to be honest, we were all having a lot of fun, but there was an actor that came in on one of my days, and she was in makeup with me, and I was in makeup for quite a while, every morning, and so we're chatting away, and then as we were leaving for set, she said, "Oh, could you give me a hand just on this bit here?" And I sort of put out my arm for her to sort of help her up, because I thought, because it was really slippery. And it was then I realized that she couldn't see. Like, I'd spent the entire morning talking to her, and she would turn and look and talk to me and look at me when I was talking. And she was saying it's because her parents were so worried about the fact that she'd lost her sight. They saw it as such a problem for her, that they were insistent that whenever she looked to people, that she looked at people when they talk, even though it makes more sense for you to turn away, because you can get a better sense of what they're saying. But as a result, she had got so used to sort of feigning sight that it was completely, you don't think anything of it. And then all of a sudden you're on set and you're like, oh, right, okay, that makes a lot more sense. So that was fascinating to me, that someone could be so good at almost pretending to be sighted, that it certainly fooled me for the first couple of hours. Admittedly, I'm in a makeup chair. It's 4 o'clock in the morning and they're sticking scars all over my face. So maybe I wasn't paying as much attention as I could, but it was just interesting to me that she was so focused on looking at people when they spoke.
I think one of the most interesting things about and see is how they choreograph fight scenes. Once again, blind people with swords seems problematic. You think there'd be a lot of collateral, what they call friendly fire incidents, but they make it that you can actually kind of buy into that. They're not actually stabbing each other. Somehow it's working.
Well, in a sense of smell, you could almost, one of the things I loved about C as well is you could almost smell it. I mean, there was just this kind of this brutality to Jason pulling himself through furnaces and stuff. You could almost, could smell the sweat on his brow and stuff. And the idea that smearing yourself with crap to make yourself smell like the place you are and things. I mean, I think it's very, it's like animals. It's like you can, when a dog comes up and senses other dogs on you, they want to know where that came from and stuff. And I think if the projection of people who've become used to being unsighted is that it's all these little elements put together that make them identify people. Like, I would be, I'd be curious to know, and I found myself doing this sort of, my son would joke about the number of times I fell down the stairs because I was constantly pretending to be unsighted as I did it. And he's like, "But you've got your eyes open." I said, "Yeah, but I'm not looking." He's like, "But you tripped over something that you saw." But I said, "But I didn't see it." Because it's like, you know what I mean? Like, and you just find yourself doing, like, what would happen if someone walks into a room? What do you get from them? Do you get a little sense of heat? Do you get a little whiff of perfume? Do you get, a little bit of that egg salad sandwich? Like, and that's the kind of stuff that was really fun to play with. I mean, I'm so lucky. I've had so many roles that have allowed me to play. And there's, I sort of joke that I literally get to pretend for a living. And this is something that I think is just it was just an amazing experience, especially when there was more of this integration with performers who were unsighted as well, because I think there's, there are opportunities there to cross crossed some bridges that hadn't existed before, and certainly made me aware, and hopefully in people watching the show, they'll have this sort of a newfound respect for and even just a change of perspective on how things are for people with different kind of disabilities.
Now when you're shooting C, is it all on a stage, or did you actually, it's a location?
Well, that was my joke with Mad Matt. My secondhand guy, Matt. I don't remember Matt's second name. I always call him Matt, but the giant guy with the little beard who was yelling fire all the time for us. I was saying, I remember standing in a really cold field with like 3 of us, and the next thing you know, it's like, when you see the show, there's like 1,000 soldiers coming at you, and it was done in such a weird, random way. I should look up Matt's. I want to look up Matt's name, because I should know Matt's second name, because he was absolutely fantastic. The best time with him. Let me see if I can. Well, I'll pull him up so you can, I can get him in later. But he's just so much fun, hanging out on set with him with the horses and all that kind of stuff. But anyways, Matt is he's a policeman and an actor. But we're sort of joking about how it was always just a few of us at a time, because we were doing it in the middle of a pandemic, right? So we're shooting, they couldn't have these massive, I think they were saying like the first season they had like 600-700 extras on set every day, and we were like 6 or 7. You know what I mean? So it's like a testament to the VFX and the sound design, and they just did an extraordinary job. And then the poor background performers we did have, it was either freezing freaking cold and pouring with rain, or it was just unbelievably hot, people fainting in the big leather masks and stuff. Wow. It was horrendous. But yeah, we also, because of Jason's schedule, I think they had to get him off. I think it was Aquaman. I don't know another film that he had to go to. So we shot all of his stuff at the front end of season 3. And then, so he was gone in like no time at all. And then all of a sudden, this stretched before us with these months and months of sort of just going in and picking up all the other sides of stuff. But it was great for me because, well, I had a lot of days, but also because I got to watch the scene. So there's a lot of scenes that we didn't actually interact on, but I was, like the scenes with the broken plane in the woods and stuff. Like, he was there for some of the exterior stuff, but a lot of the stuff he wasn't around for. So I got to be there on set for his stuff, so that when we shot it later, I knew what he was going to do. And it was so much fun to be back on set with Jason again too. It was just like such a pleasure.
Well, that's part of the thing that's so cool is that, one of the things that's so cool about the show, obviously you got McKay, with Tormada McKay.
Yeah.
You got Jason Momoa there, and then you got Joe Flanagan.
And Flanagan.
He got in there as well. I mean, everyone but Rachel you got in. It looks like.
I know. They kept going. I'm sure we're going to get some more people in as well. But it was just, it's funny. Tropper was saying how nice it was to actually be able to bring in some people that, that it's always nice when you've got your lead and they have friends who are actually, talented. You know what I mean? So he got to bring in, it's not sort of embarrassing to go, oh great, so and so wants his friend to come in and play this role, and it's like, oh god, I hope it works. But so apparently they were quite funny. Jason was very, very kind, and suggested me for the role. He said, it's funny, he told the story actually at the screening in LA when we did the screening for season 3, which was just fantastic. They did like a party and the whole thing, and my son went and got to hang out with Jason Momoa and stuff. He was just thrilled. And Jason's such a gracious movie star. I mean, like, he's just such a lovely guy. He always lit up a room. Now, of course, it's just even more so. But he was saying like, I saw, I was like, I was Baba Voss. I saw Baba Voss. I am Baba Voss. Like, that's me. That's who I am. I said, then I read Tormada. That's Hewlett. That's you. So I thought that's kind of cute that we were born to play these characters, and I just do the worst Jason Momoa impersonation. But I need to work out more. But yeah, so it's really, and we had, and Joe was at the Flanagan was at the opening as well, and it's just the Stargate family is always just absolutely so lovely. I mean, I sort of try to keep in touch with them all on social media in some way, just even if it's just to see what they're up to. It's just fun to see what Jules working on, and McGillian and Flanagan and stuff. So yeah, it's they're a lovely bunch.
And I mean, and the acting really is phenomenal in that show. You have like Momoa, he proved himself way more of an actor than you would think just watching like Aquaman. I mean, he just looks tired and worn, like this warrior that's just been beaten down with so many battles, so many fights. You're just like, Jesus Christ. Well,
and they don't cut. That's the other thing I was really impressed with him is like, you can cut together performances. Like, you know what I mean? You do lots of little snippy cuts here and there. Like it's like, so, and it's like, oh, it looks so cool. And oh my God, it's so deep. And meanwhile, the actor just can't remember their lines. You know what I mean? They've had to cut around it all. But like Jason's, they've got long shots that do not cut, that are relentless. And he has to go through whole massive emotional things. And it's just, and he's just lovely to watch. It's just fantastic. It's just, I mean, he's really come into his own. I mean, he was always, it's funny, he was always an artist. I mean, that's the thing about Jason, was that, I was always a bit sort of, when I first met him, he was always he's a bit Guns N' Roses for me. You know what I mean? A little bit, we were oil and water into how different we were. You know what I mean? Like he is as laid back as I am uptight. And Guns N' Roses is probably not the right term. I see, there you go. I've just dated myself. But but the fact of the matter is, the guy, he reads, he does art, he does a lot of this found art stuff. He does. I mean, he's serious about this stuff, and I think that's what was really great to see, that sort of being embraced in a show like this. So
when you're playing Tormada, I mean, obviously there's a little bit of McKay in there. I mean, it's got to be a little. He's sort of like the
little Hewlett. This is like Hewlett. Yeah.
I mean, like if he went, like if McKay went a little evil, Tormada isn't so far from it. But
I feel like if we had a couple more seasons of Stargate, there would have been a Tormada would have shown up. There would have been like an evil McKay clone of some sort. Yeah.
Oh, there's alternate dimensions in that. Oh, in Stargate, I was already set up for that stuff.
I was like, people always ask me, like, what do I most, what do I wish happened in Stargate that didn't? And it was like, I want evil McKay. Well, now I get to do evil McKay. So it's kind of, yeah, there's definitely, I'm just not I'm just not as good an actor as those chameleon types who can just sort of convert them, could just change into someone else. I've always focused on just pulling out the elements of myself that work for the character, right? I mean, obviously I don't want to blow up everyone, and I'm hopefully not that evil, but I do have a glee for science and technology, and I do enjoy a good speech now and again, a monologue. I found that the only way that I feel that my performances are real are when they are pulled from my own sort of psyche to some extent. So, I'm not that I have to go off and do heroin to be a heroin addict or commit mass murder to be a mass murderer, but I think you can always find elements of yourself that relate to the character, and those are the things you want to cling to, I think. So there's definitely some McKayisms in there, and I think there was a lot of fun in playing with that. There was a lot of times I found myself going like, oh, the Stargate fans they're gonna see what they make of this one. You know what I mean? So it's it was a lot of fun to play. It really was truly one of my favorite jobs ever.
So I mean, one of the cool things not a lot of actors have more than one success. I mean, usually if you're in like one TV show, that was your thing.
Yeah.
Now you've had Stargate, Atlantis. Now you're in C. Both have strong fan bases. Both have these epic worlds that people just absorb into.
Yeah.
What is that? Why do you think? Can you tell why these shows are able to do that? I mean, what do they have in common that can cultivate a level of support like that in a fan base?
It's funny. I mean, well, Jason. Jason helps. Jason generally helps. I don't know. I mean, I've always felt that this was an industry where people professed to understand and to know what they were talking about, and that they never did. Like I still to this day, I've been doing this for like almost 40 years now, almost 40 years. And I still feel like it's lightning in a bottle. Like, I feel like you just don't know. You can put everything, you can have all the right elements, put them all together. All this is a guaranteed never, ever works out the way you plan. And then there's like, this is never going to work. And then you've got Apocalypse Now. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I really feel like we pretend to understand it as an industry. And then I think there's a certain amount of stuff you can gauge. I mean, Marvel and Disney and all those, there's a certain sort of like a recipe for these things. I think you can go through to get these, to get a certain level of success. But that to go that extra step, to become a Game of Thrones, to become a Star Trek or a Stargate or any of those things, I think is honestly, there's still a lot of magic in there. You know what I mean? I mean, says the nerd science guy, but I really do feel like there's elements that we have no control over. Also, it's weird how people pick up on stuff, right? I mean, there's like, oh my God, you had so much chemistry. They hated each other.
Yeah.
But the camera picks up something that people, I mean, I think there's it's so hard to know what's going to work and what's not going to work. I feel incredibly lucky, because I have got to play some amazing characters. I mean, I've got to play my favorite characters in shows. You know what I mean? That's so rare that you get to do that. Too damn rare. So yeah, I never know what's going to succeed and what's not going to. I truly, I've sort of given up on it, on trying to know. I mean, I remember very early on, I did a film with a very famous director and a very kind of a big cast, and everyone was like, well, this is it. And even then I remember going like, is it? And it wasn't. Like, that was the funny thing. This is it. From here on in, it never is. It's an up and down. It's a good reason to be nice to people, because you just don't know. But it's so funny. Like, it really is self-preservation. I mean, it goes up and down all the time. You just never know. 1 minute you're at the top of the game, and the next no one wants to know you. So you just have to. I think you just sort of have to roll with it. And I've long ago stopped saying, well, this is how it is, because no one knows.
So obviously Tormada shows up in the second season.
Yeah.
Pretty minor
part. creepy little beginning, standing by the bookcase.
Right. I mean, it's minor. You think. I mean, I must admit, when I first saw that scene, I thought to myself, "That's nice. David Hewlett is in another lore that they did a thing." That's cool. Sort of like also how Joe Flanagan's character, in the second season as well. It's like you see him for a moment, you're like, "That's cool." Yeah, a little nod.
Yeah.
Did you know they were setting you up for season 3 to be basically you're basically the end game villain of C in some level?
I did in that it was kind of pitched that way. I mean, I think I think they probably would have gone around the casting differently. I mean, they put together, Tropper wrote a monologue, which they ended up using, funnily enough, because he just put together a monologue of a bunch of different things that he wanted him to say into one big speech, so that he could just get actors to just spit it out for the audition, right? And I had so much fun with that, because how often do you get to do monologues? It's just, right. You just don't. So I had so much fun with it. But of course, when you have fun with things, they tend to be kind of fun to watch too, often. So he was, he quite enjoyed it, and then incorporated it into the show later. Which was great, because I already knew it, so I don't have to memorize it again. There are people can not memorize stuff for auditions. I don't know how they do it. Like, I have to memorize everything. I just don't. My brain doesn't. I'm too ADHD to read things and act. I just can't do it. I have to memorize everything. So of course, page and a half monologue, I memorized the entire bloody thing. But yeah, it was that was always the plan, was to sort of show up, to be, he's the scientist who sort of steps out of the shadows. And he really wanted when he talked to Jason about it for season 3, he was saying, like, look, how do you out Bautista? You got Bautista versus Momoa, right. Boom. It's like, the brothers, there's like, and then it's like, then what do? You try to get someone bigger? No, you go the opposite. You go with a little shriveled old man, but who is evil in a different way, who is an enemy that requires a different approach. And it's not an approach that Baba Voss is comfortable with. I mean, he likes to, he knows how to play the game, but at the same time, he runs towards the explosions as opposed to away from it, and I think that's that was sort of, I think it's what they really wanted to play with, and I think they had a lot of fun with it. I certainly had a lot of fun with it. So yeah.
Now, the one interesting thing about Tormada, and I want to know your perspective. Now, according to Tormada in the show, he says his actions are out of revenge for the death of Ito Voss. That's why he hates Baba Voss. Do you think that's just an excuse so he can blow up what he wants to blow up, or do you think he truly cared about Ito?
I do. It's funny because at first I thought it was just an excuse, and in talking to Tropper about it, he was saying, no, he this guy took a chance on him. Like he did, I mean, yeah, there was definitely there's kind of a love there. I mean, I think he owes everything to Ito, and I don't think at first he wanted particularly. Again, he gives it up. I don't know how far we're into the show. I should probably be careful, but I don't think he's really that interested in leading. He just wants the most toys. You know what I mean? Like he just wants access to. It's a bit like he's a bit like the Woz versus I've just completely blanked on his name. The other Apple guy, the famous one.
Steve Jobs.
Yeah, it's like Woz versus Jobs. You know what I mean? Like Woz is just like, yeah, fine, you go make your millions of dollars. I want to play with the computers and the satellites, and I want to do my own like that. I feel like that is Tormada, like that. And his love for Ito was that Ito protected him from all this stuff and just let him play. And that's like, all right, okay. How do I now establish a new world where I get to do whatever I want whenever I want? And I think. So I think there's an element of posturing there as well. You know what I mean? In that he's like, I think he's goading Baba Voss a lot with that. But no, I do think that I do think that there was a fondness there, that he was it's like, oh, the good old days where Baba Voss just gave me all the things I needed to blow shit up. You know what I mean? Like I think that was sort of a part of it.
I mean, another interesting thing about Tormada is that in many ways he's a very precarious situation. His power comes from these bombs. These bombs are made by these sighted kids who, by the time I think we're up to episode 6 of the show, are gone. He has to realize that his whole power structure is based on something that can't be, continued, because eventually those kids may age out or die. They may leave. I mean, there's got to be is there some sort of, you think, vulnerability in knowing that this power base comes from something that may not be a permanent in supply?
Yeah, I mean, I think he addresses that at some point. I can't remember exactly when, because we shot it all over the place. But where he says, like, I only need them now. I'm coming up with ways of doing and extending these things and getting better at them. I mean, and you'll see that there's a progression to the weapons throughout the season as well. They get more and more sort of complex and portable in some ways. But I think that he's constantly looking ahead on that. And I think one of the most telling things about Tormada is that he's like, it's not just these weapons. It's not just the fact that it's not just the actual physical things that he's got. It's all of this knowledge that he's being. So the whole time that those kids are working on the explosions, they're also having to read him or document all of these old books, all of these old all these old science and physics. And so he's learning stuff that he's, if there was a season 4 and, Tormada would be onto something else. You know what I mean? Like, I think his, at least in my mind, and maybe that's just my own bias, is like, I'm like, it's this knowledge. It's this like, oh my God, like, I want more. Like, what do you like? The advantage of the sighted to him is that he can now read, the internet worth of stuff that is no longer on the internet. I think that's the big thing for him. He's already 10 years ahead working on stuff. Like, this is just what you're seeing now is just the beginning of what he wants to do.
So one debate on the show, the two kids, Hanawa and Kafun, I think how you pronounce the other name, have a debate.
Right.
So the two kids have this big debate. Debate being, I think it's Kofun, if I'm going to get these pronunciations right, anywhere close.
Right.
Basically
I never get them right.
Right.
Yeah.
He burns the library of books and says, this is like the evil. This is why things went wrong the first time. Hanawa is pissed off, saying that was our knowledge to everything. If we had this knowledge we're going to be totally different if we get the books and the technology. Is Tormada proof that it's that knowledge, if they were able to get their sight back, was going to bring things again in the wrong direction that history apparently took itself in?
Well, this is the funny thing is, like, I mean, I think this is the nature of humankind, isn't it? I mean, like, the fact of the matter is that, okay, I'm blowing people up, but they were stabbing each other before. I mean, like, it's not like they were all getting along beautifully and it was like this idyllic world of people not seeing each other. I mean, like, I feel like this is always the case, I feel. And I think this is even just when, I mean, not to get too, too sort of like preachy about this, but I feel like this is the state of our world now. Is you can blame social media, you can blame the internet, you can blame nuclear weapons, or I mean, the reality is we're the ones making those decisions. I mean, we're the ones who bring these things into being. It's not knowledge that's the problem. It's the humans that wield that knowledge. And I think for a very long time, we have rewarded people who have just focused on the technology, not on the people, and not on the good or the greater good, not on the what is it contributing to mankind, or what is the detriment to mankind. I mean, those are things that I just don't think we've kept in, that we're only starting to consider now. So the idea that room full of books is going to solve anything for them, as to me, seems silly. I mean, but again, I don't think, again, I guess I'm defending my character, which I think I may be a little bit in character on this, because I shouldn't be defending him at all. But no, I think he's as he says, it's so much better than all the stabbing and the, like, it's just blow them up and then the problem solved. It's a bit like drone strikes now, right? I mean, it's just like, oh, well, when none of our people are worried about it. We just blow up the bad guys and it's problem solved. Now, well, there's a few good people died too, but that's not the point. I mean, this is the nature of, this is who we are. This is what we do. I mean, I feel like we can always find a reason why we want to kill each other. And it doesn't take much for people to do that. So I don't feel that the knowledge was the problem. I mean, maybe it allows us to do it better. I mean, you know what I mean? It's a bit like ending the Second World War with a atomic bomb over Japan. I mean, it's absolutely, if you think about the horrendousness of what we did with that, and at the same time you go, is that a greater good? I guess. I mean, like, it's one of those things that I've always struggled with, is it's like, you've got this power. At what point do you wield that power? And I think Tormada is unfazed by any of that stuff. He's just like, well, you wield the power. Like, what the hell? You blow up enough people will stop asking to be blown up. You know what I mean? Like, and that's basically his mentality. He's a product of, he's mocked, derided. He's grown up in a society that's based entirely on strength. Baba Voss is the ultimate survivor in this world that he lives in, and I am the complete opposite of that. I'm a little twisted, broken, brain, basically. That's it. That's all I've got, is the brain. And I will use it in any way that I have to succeed. So, well, it's a very long-winded answer. Sorry.
Well, they do imply that he's a little bit like Dr. Mangala with Harlan. Oh, no, was it Harlan? Who was the Ranger? Who, I guess he was saying, he was trying to figure out how to get sci-fi by like human experimentation. It's like, they're definitely bringing in some Dr. Mangala stuff into his character.
There's definitely, I mean, and again, it's not even, I mean, that's, we've done that for years. I mean, we've done that all through history. We've experimented on each other about, as long as it's our enemies, we can experiment on them. You know what I mean? Like, it's with, of course, obviously with the Nazi doctors being the absolute sort of pinnacle of that. But yeah, that's definitely it. I mean, it's a bit like that childlike sense of wonder, except it's, you're exploding frogs, you know what I mean? Only you're doing it with humans instead. You know what I mean? It's I think it is a horrible sort of human quality that hopefully we're sorting out, weeding out of our society. But at the same time,
Well, I think that it brought up another interesting idea about Tormada, because he himself seems to be an argument, because he is the science argument. And on the one hand, we talk about the library and that allowed bombs to be created. And you think, well, if you take it get rid of the library, he's just this kind of little scientist guy who doesn't have this access. But he was still torturing people for experiments. So it was like he was going to stop without the books anyway.
No, exactly. I mean, this is just giving him a jump ahead of things. I mean, and again, he's using the knowledge that is most useful to him right now. I mean, there's other things I'm sure this is probably great good he could be doing as well. And he'd be happy to do that just as well, as long as it's something that's interesting to him. But right now, his play for survival is these things. This is how he functions in this world that's being created. And I mean, you could say that it's because of the knowledge, but that knowledge has come from a world that he's grown up in. I mean, like, his desire for these things has come from this brutal society that various different societies that have existed, because while they're all idyllic when they're on their own, they're still murdering each other as soon as they come into contact with each other. So and again, I'm sort of playing a little bit on the Tormada side of this stuff, but one of the things I love about the show and about Jason's character in it is that Jason's not a good guy. I mean Baba Voss is Jason's a lovely guy. Jason is a good guy, but Baba Voss is not a he's not a dove of peace. I mean, that guy is, he's absolutely brutal. He's done terrible things, and he will continue to do terrible things. I mean, but that's part of survival in this world.
When I know the talk has been season 3 is the end of C, but at the same time, this part I'm thinking, watching the show, they built up a lot of world building just to shut it down after 3.
I know it's so frustrating, isn't it? I was just like, oh man, I came in at the wrong time.
Because it feels like they introduced these other concepts, these other places, the other civilizations. It kind of feels like there's at least 4 more seasons of things that need to be explored before you just call it.
I think you totally could. I'm sure you could. And I imagine there's more. That's where all the heady business stuff starts coming in that I never understand. I never understand how these shows get greenlit, how they get canceled, I've never understood it. So again, I stopped trying to figure it out. I've just enjoyed myself while I can.
I mean, is there any spark of hope of a 4th season that's coming, or is it 3 is the end?
There's always, I think there's always that chance that, maybe they'll do a movie, or maybe there's always that's something that comes up, I think, a lot with every show I've ever done. But this one seems pretty set. They've got a pretty clear vision to sort of like to wrap things up. So I don't think it'd be interesting though, wouldn't it be, that like you could almost do like a different portion of the world, like in but again, I there's also something to be said for leave them wanting more. You know what I mean? Like, there's an aspect of, like, I think there's a tendency, especially in sort of North American television, to just beat the poor horse until it's beyond dead. Whereas the Brits are very good at sort of like, doing these short run series that you're like, oh my God, everyone loves them and they want more, but they only do 8 of them. You know what I mean? Like, so there's an element of that here as well. I think there's a certain sort of prestige to it. I mean, I'd say that Apple's doing some amazing stuff. I'm watching the Sisters show as well right now. That Bad Sisters is just really fun.
Yeah.
They're just doing, I wasn't sure at first. I was like, Jesus, what the hell are these? What are they up to? But they're just having fun. They're just making these, like, let's do this. Let's make that.
Is that Echoes? Is that
there's one called Bad Sisters, I think.
Oh, okay. I
think
don't
it's
know
called Bad
one.
Sisters. It's fun. It's really fun. It's like a very dark comedy. And then of course there's Severance. There's a bunch of stuff on that on Apple that I'm really, really enjoying. So I got to get me on another Apple show. I like these Apple shows.
Well, no, I haven't seen any. Are there C action figures that they've come out with? I don't think.
Oh, that would be so cool.
Because a Baba Voss or Tormada would be a pretty cool figure to have sitting on your counter somewhere.
Yeah, I have a McKay one. I guess I could scar up a McKay one, maybe. I have a Tormada face.
Oh, really?
I was given a Tormada. I was just gonna grab it. Well, I take it off the wall. Is it gonna fall? Let me.
Yeah, don't break anything.
If you can see it, see if you can see it from here. Oh, see they right.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's Tormada's face. That's so the amazing, wonderful makeup effects team just they did such a good job. And they were so sweet. They put basically the cast of my face in a little picture frame and gave it to me on the last day. And I got very verklempt. Tears may have, I was quite touched. Yeah. Yeah,
Well,
lovely bunch.
Well, if you talk to any of the people from C, you'll be like, "Where's your freaking action figures?"
That's it. Yeah, Apple, where's my action figure?
Right.
You know what? It's the funny thing about that. Actually, sorry, slight aside, but is there were people I knew out of makeup, and there were people I knew in makeup. So there are people who have never seen me without makeup on. And I went to the screening, and there were people who I like saying hi to. They're like, "Hi, and what did you do on the show?" I'm like, I was acting opposite you in the and they're like, oh my god, I didn't even, like that. So, which is kind of funny, which isn't entirely surprising, like in that I just like this, who's this goofy little clown kid who, and it's oh, that's a Tormada guy. I love that. There's something wonderful about being not recognized, like it being unrecognizable in your performance. But there was a whole bunch of the crew all knew me with my face. But as soon as I took the face off, everyone's like, yeah, hey, which is just a fascinating experience for me, because I've never really had that before. Like I've never had that kind of a transformation in a character. So who knows? Maybe I will become one of those chameleon actors.
Well, you're also in another great film. You play, probably get it wrong, Masson. In Cabinet of Curiosities from Del Toro.
Guillermo del Toro.
Yes. GDT for October 25th. So basically, I guess the main first question really is, how freaking crazy is this going to turn out to be?
Oh my god, I was joking today on Twitter. I was saying we always want to know what's inside that big brilliant brain of Guillermo del Toro's. Now we know, and none of us are ever going to sleep again. He's like the Gandalf of Hollywood, that guy. Like he's this wonderful, creative, comic book loving film geek who just revels in this stuff. Like you just can't help but get excited about what he's working on. This is just a testament to just what a wonderful guy he is. He gets given a sackload of money to make stuff for Netflix, and what does he do? He gets a bunch of little story ideas, and he hands them off to all these directors that he likes and says, go make a little movie out of it, and then and gives them the budget to do it properly. Like it was so much fun. And one of those little directors was my friend Vincenzo, who I started acting with when I was 13 years old. I mean, he made The Cube, he made Splice, he's in The Tall Grass, a bunch of stuff. Incredibly talented, absolutely sweetest man alive, and you should totally talk to him on the show because you'd love him. And incredibly talented. So, and Guillermo goes, all right, I got a rat one for you. Go see what you did with this rats one. And he wrote what I think is one of the best scripts he's ever written, Vincenzo, honestly. And it's extraordinary. It's one of those scripts that, yeah, there's some dialogue here and there, but for the most part, that it's like dialogue, and then just action. It's all just this series of, it's like one long horrifying chase sequence. I mean, it's just, and it was relentless, and it was brutal, and I'm still hurting to this day. I still can't move my shoulders properly from crawling through the tunnels. But I love every second of it. For some reason, Vincenzo's wife, amazing distributor, Kana, said that all actors are masochists, and I think she probably hit on something there, because there's something about like being hurt for your art that just makes it feel that much more real and important to me. And I've always done that with Vincenzo. I turned to him at one point on this one. I said, I could do this at 13, but I'm not sure I could at 54. It's a little more difficult to get buried alive and eaten by, and chewed on by rats and things. I mean, at one point I'm lying in a coffin with live rats running over my face, and I'm like, what am I? Why do I enjoy this? I'm not enjoy it, but why do I? But there's something about it. I feel like maybe it's some kind of Anglo-Saxon guilt that I've got. I feel like I should be somehow denigrated and abused, and somehow that means that I've earned my pay. But it's a spectacular story. It's a spectacular story, and even just the whole concept of this Cabinet of Curiosities, this idea, it harkens back to the old Alfred Hitchcock Presents, the Twilight Zones, all that stuff you grew up with, all the Fangora magazines with all these crazy visual like makeup effects because he loves his practical effects. We've got the stuff they've got in ours is freaking crazy. These beautiful corpses. I mean, they can be beautiful, but for me as a kid growing up on Fangoria magazines, looking at how they made all these wonderful masks and stuff, it was just glorious. I mean, and he's just Vincenzo and Guillermo. I mean, they're brilliant, absolutely brilliant. And the crew that he put together was just, it was like making an Oscar award-winning film every couple of weeks, I mean, that would say a couple of weeks. It was, God, I guess they took a good month or so each one, something like that. But I can't remember. It went by so fast. It was having so much fun.
Well, you got to send Vincenzo my email address.
I will. Yeah, you should talk to him because it's just he's you want to talk about a treasure trove of, because you can talk comic books with him, you can talk filmmaking, and he's one of the smartest, sweetest people I've ever. I mean, you talk about like directions for the future it is about the friends you make. I mean, and I was very, very lucky that this nerd came up to me as I thought about it back then when I thought I was cool. Little did I know I was just a nerd in hiding. This guy comes up to me and goes like, I'm making a movie. I was like, that's nice for you, kid. Do you want to be in it? And I was like, well, sure. Okay. And the next, and that was at 13 or 14 where we were. And we spent our summers making films together on 8mm, 16mm, and then eventually 35mm. And then next thing you know, we're doing black and white films for Netflix,
That's
so
awesome.
It's just been an absolute, it's just a pleasure. And it's so much fun to be back on set with him and giggling about how silly it all is and how much fun it is. And I was like, how the hell did you talk them into this? He said, I just asked and they said yes. So,
well, like I said, definitely send him my email. That'd be absolutely awesome.
For sure.
So one thing I thought was really cool, I finally got to see the first trailer to Cabinet of Curiosities.
There's a new one out today.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah,
I've not seen that one yet, so I'll definitely tune in.
We a little more Guillermo in that one, which is kind of fun. It really harkens back to that how Alfred Hitchcock presents stuff.
Well, one thing that he said that was really kind of interesting. So we'll get you to throw your 2 cents in. So in the first trailer, he states, "The world is beautiful and horrible." So where are you standing on this, and where does your story cover this idea?
Oh yeah, no, there's. I mean, I would even go so far as saying it's beautifully horrible. You know what I mean? Like I've always been a big fan of a beauty in horror films and even in the world to some extent. I mean, talk to an entomologist for a bit. I mean, talk about beautiful, horrible. I mean, the world of the insect world is just is the most they do everything in the most revolting way. And yet there's a strange sort of beauty to it. I think there's, these stories. Now, the funny thing is, it's all top secret. I don't know anything other than the little bits that I heard about the various different stories that were going on. The only one I actually got to read was the one that I was in. And it was like, it's the thing I love about it is there's this, he's created it in, he did it in black and white, which is bizarre to me, like that they even let us do it. I think they're doing a color version as well, but so there is every element of this thing is like a painting. I mean, you talk about, it's a bit like a graphic novel. I mean, there's beautiful work with light and shadow and not seeing as much as you do see, as that's part of the old classic horror stuff. So I'm a big believer in the beauty of horror. When it's done well, it's just, I think it is an art form. I mean, Dario Argento being a perfect example of like, he elevated this stuff to, well, Hitchcock, I mean, another example. I mean, who elevated what were like pulp stories in old comic books. They've elevated them into an art form. And Guillermo lives in this wonderful sort of crossroads between fandom and creation. Like I feel very sort of lucky to be around him and get to work with him a few times now. His Shape of Water, Nightmare Alley, and this one, and Splice for that matter, because he was a producer on Splice. And there's just this, like Vincenzo as well. There's this, we love this stuff. we like if we weren't making this stuff, we would be watching it and talking about it and analyzing it. And, so it feels a bit cheeky that we're actually getting paid to do it. And I think there's an element of that with, less so with Guillermo. Guillermo's definitely at a stage now where he's like, no, I'm quite happy to be, like he knows his value in this thing. But what I love about it is that he's taken that and he shares it. Like, like a true nerd, he's like, I don't want to do this alone. Let's bring in, and this is just a testament to that. It's like his joy in watching what other people will make of these horrific stories, so.
The one thing he also mentions that is full of practical effects monsters.
He loves practical effects. Yeah.
Now in your episode, what is there a practical effect creature and what's the nature of this creature?
There is, I don't know what I'm allowed to say, but there was a lot of mechanical work. We're working with a lot of rats. So there was a lot of combination of some live rats, some mechanical stuff, some CG stuff. So I'm really curious to see how that stuff works. But again, the way that Vincenzo films it is like a classic horror. Like it's like you see what works and you don't see what doesn't. And that was always the beauty of practical effects. It's just those little snippets, those little elements that say, oh my God, it's right there with him. And there were a number of things on this one. It goes in a bunch of different directions. So we got some fun corpses and there's a bunch of dream sequences and things. So this there's a lot of stuff where you go like, what? Okay, got it. So there's a lot of different stuff. But again, I've always found that if you can get away with practical effects, do it, because it takes forever to shoot often, but it's just so worth it because we're still a little bit ahead of the CG in our processing, our brains, the way our brains process. There's still an element of like, oh, CG, that's really good. Oh, wow, that looks almost real. You know what I mean? Like there's still an element of that to it.
Yeah.
Whereas with the practical stuff, you're just like, look, it's greasy. You know what I mean? Like there's like there's still a sort of a primal thing to actually seeing it now. CG will soon become indistinguishable. In many cases, I think the best CG is the stuff we're not even aware is happening. And there's a lot of that. There's a lot of stuff happening in Vincenzo's Graveyard Rats, which in this Cabinet of Curiosities episode, where there's stuff that you won't even know that it's CG. Because it's enhancing a scene or it's tidying up a mechanical effect that's required or even the camera for that matter. We shot a large portion of this in a series of tunnels that were built. I was sized for a tunnel and then told not to eat too much over Christmas holidays. Yeah.
Seriously?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So they said, so how would you move in a tunnel? I was like, well, like, am I cramped or they're like, well, pretty cramped. Like, what's the most cramped you can be? And I was like, okay, so I'm the most cramped I can be. And they would measure you. And then I came back after Christmas. They were like, okay, let's do a tunnel fitting. And you're like, what? You're like, get in the tunnel. You're like, so yeah, they built like hundreds and hundreds of feet of this stuff, and you would crawl through and the camera was mounted above, and it was glorious. And again, because it was done practically, you could have, it's a CG tunnel, you're crawling through green screen and it's all whipping by. No, we're literally in these little tunnels that have been built specifically for you.
Thank God you're not claustrophobic, huh?
Well, that was the fun. Okay, get this. You want to hear a nightmare? Okay. So the night before we start filming, so I never sleep the night before we start filming, ever. I'm always nervous. Like before I travel, I never sleep either. But so night before my first day of shooting, it's also always early in the morning. So I'm like terrified I'm going to sleep through the alarm. So I finally go to sleep. And what do I dream of? I dream of being trapped in a tunnel while we're filming and getting claustrophobia, freaking out. And so I have a full-on claustrophobia freak out attack in a dream and wake up like a classic, like literally like one of those like, like kind of like woke up like, and then I'm like, and Jane's like, what is it? What is it? I said, what if I'm claustrophobic? Because I don't know what like there's not like a sign-in sheet that says, have you been trapped in tunnels and has that ever been a problem for you? Like I've never thought of myself as claustrophobic, but then I was like, what if I am? But testament to the way they built these tunnels, there were emergency exits everywhere. There were people manning the emergency exits everywhere. They used special rubber material instead of anything that might cause too much dust. They looked after me incredibly well. Actually, there was only one moment that I felt claustrophobia, and that was weirdly was just when they had to put a bunch of stuff on top of me at one point, and it was taking a while to put stuff on me, and I thought, I have to get out of this tunnel now. And then I was like, but if I get out of the tunnel now, I'm never going to get back in the tunnel again. So I just stayed there and I was fine. But actually it just became fun. I actually quite enjoyed it. Although when I talk about it now, I could feel a little race in the heart where I go like, yeah, no, it could have been claustrophobic. Yeah, could have.
That's crazy. It's kind of funny when you think about now watching the show to think that there's guys like as you're having the big scene like to the left with the exits, you're like, dude, just take the exit right over there. What are you doing?
Yeah. It was well, and it's funny because they were, and then in some scenes they were like, okay, you can come out now, and then we'll walk you around to the other side. And I was like, screw it, I'll crawl back again. It's fine. You know what I mean? But I'll tell you, it's a workout. That's like, you want to do an exercise, you should do the Guillermo del Toro, Vincenzo Natali Graveyard Rats workout. Because I was like every day, I was like, oh my God, my arm, because you're dragging yourself around. Luckily, we had fabulous stunt crew that did a bunch of, thank God. There was anytime, and what's also great, it was always my behind whenever they had the stunt guys, and the stunt guys behinds are much nicer than mine. So we had people doing some of the stuff for us, because after a while you could only do, I'm so old.
So you had a stunt crawler? You had a stunt crawler?
It was a stunt crawler for some of the running away stuff. Yeah. Some of it was unfortunately, Vincenzo's so freaking good at this stuff that he always figured out a way to have me turn around and look back. And I was like, damn it, no stunt guy for that one. I got to turn and look. Okay, so you climb for 15 minutes through these tunnels and then turn around. I'm like, oh, can we do the turnaround part later? No, he was very good. No, what am I saying? He's horrible. He's like, he just asks and I say, sure, yeah, I'll do it.
So how close? You have all these rats you said that were in it. These are real rats, and are these
some
trained?
Real rats?
Are they trained? Can you train a rat?
There was some really neatly trained. Yeah, no, they absolutely. They were doing stuff. You have to sort of, you sort of show them a course that they need to go through to get their food, and they're much better than most of the actors I've worked with. They'll immediately hit all their marks and run along the things. They're really quite trainable. They're smart, very smart, adaptable things. They don't love being dropped on human faces. I'd have to say, and that's not something I would volunteer for anybody, but for Guillermo and Vincenzo, I was willing to do it. But it was that was quite uncomfortable, I'd have to say, because their claws are actually quite sharp, and they just shit everywhere. So,
but don't they carry the plague?
Only if they're I think, yeah, wild rats would probably be. They're all domesticated, and they're fed food that hopefully isn't too horrible to.
But how do you do that? How do you put in the rats in your face and everything else? How do you do that safely?
Well, they've got people there, and it's not like they're gonna. Worst comes to worst, they might give you a nick or something. They might give you a little nibble. But it doesn't really. It's weird. That's another thing that for a lot of, there were people on the crew who just couldn't watch, and I was like, really? I don't just play a coward on television. I am a full-on complete coward, and it just didn't bother me. No, the only time it would bother me was one of them was, maybe I had curry the night before or something. I don't know. It was making a lot of deposits, shall we say? And that was a little much. Yeah. I always thought of them as these sort of nice dry little pellets that you see left behind when you, but no, this was not. Yeah. So that was, let's just say there was a lot of incredibly highly alcoholic wipes standing by at all times. No, they were wonderful, and I got a couple little nicks and scratches, which were kind of cool because we then incorporated them into the show. So there was literally a nurse there who would immediately leap in and wipe things off and make sure you weren't getting nothing, So yeah, they were very, and also the thing about the rats is they were in a way, they're more worried about hurting the rats than me. I was more worried about hurting the rats than me. I was terrified I was going to crush one by accident while I was overacting or something. You know?
That, to me, I think once the rat crapped on my face, I think I'd be done. I'd be like, you know what? I appreciate the money. I'm getting the fuck out of here.
Yeah. Well, there's this weird kind of separation. It's probably some kind of a psychosis where you really do. There's like an acting me, and then there's a me. And the me would never put up with any of that kind of stuff. The acting me is like, it's like a machine. It's like a weird sort of like, you just go into a zone. I think, you know, if I was in tunnels or asked to go through tunnels, I don't think I could do it. But as an actor, for some reason, there's a weird, I think there's a, they call it something. There's an interesting, because it's also a problem as well, where there's this weird sort of illusion of, I can't remember what it's called. There's a fantastic term for it, where basically you hold up a camera to film something and suddenly what you ask people to do is somehow justified. But there's a sense that and with the camera, when I'm filming, I might do something stupid to get it for the camera, and in doing so could endanger myself or other people. And there's actually a terminology for it that you've got to be careful of, because I think that especially, you know, when we were young filmmakers, we would do things and we'd do anything we could to get the shot. And I always grew up, my many years in this industry was always about this: how do I get the shot? How do I get the shot? You know, how do I make this work? Oh, okay, it's really uncomfortable now, and I won't be able to move for a week afterwards, but at least we got the shot, type thing. And now I'm getting to an age where I go like, okay, can we get the shot and not die? You know what I mean? What is it called? There's a fantastic thing. There's a myth of, it's called like the myth of consequence. Yeah, there's some very cool term for it that some erudite person will, I'm sure, be able to tell you, but obviously I can't.
I mean, like, if there was a rat in your house, would you freak out about it? I'd be like, oh my God, it's in my house.
We had one. It was a mouse, actually. We just called him Harry. And then once they've got a name, they're just not that bad. And then I got him in I actually did a video. I wanted to document my Harry adventures. I put it on YouTube. There's so I bought these humane traps. But they weren't quite sensitive enough for Harry, because Harry was obviously quite fleet of foot. Yeah. So I set up my Ring cameras. Was it Ring? The little surveillance cameras in our kitchen cabinet, and saw where he went. And I would place these things down where I'd seen him on the video. And cheeky little guy. And so I caught him and I took him to the local park. But everywhere, all along the way, I was looking for a place to drop him. I thought, well, I can't put him here because there's a house there, and he's just going to want to go to that house. So I ended up taking him into the woods, you know, quite far into a park in urban Toronto, and where I was told by most of my friends, including people who know, that he probably didn't make it the night. But I was like, yeah, but I felt like he's on his own now. In my mind, he's got a family. He's probably got a little business, you know, where he tells stories about how he used to live in the city, you know, like but yeah, I'm a huge suck. I would have a hard time. I'd have a hard time killing anything. So except my dog sometimes just drives me nuts. But, you know.
So in Cabinet of Curiosities, Masson, is it true Twilight Zone? Is it like, does he deserve what he gets, or is this a purely innocent guy?
I never think I deserve what I get, but it's definitely it's such a classic. Like, it really is like an old school classic. I mean, this is someone who it's a combination of, I think it's a slippery slope, right? You make one mistake and then you struggle to remedy that mistake by making another mistake. You know what I mean? And I think there's always a sense of warning about these stories, which I love. The sense of like, you know, just, you got to step back. We were talking about this about technology when we're talking about like C and stuff, where it's like, you know, you invent these things and then you go, well, what do you mean they're using it for bad? Like, because we don't think that way, right? So this guy's constantly trying to get ahead. He'd be well involved. He'd own a lot of NFTs if he was around today. Early ones. No, not early ones, late ones probably. So he just makes a lot of mistakes, and in desperation to fix those mistakes, he makes even bigger mistakes. But greed, it comes down, I think a big part of it comes down to greed. And there's a kind of a fun, he's almost like a disgraced nobleman. So there's a because of the setting of the times and stuff, he sort of almost fancies himself like a bit of an aristocrat, like he's somehow better than the time that he lives in. So there's a sense of entitlement to it, which is kind of fun, which of course comes to literally bite him in the ass.
but see, that's the best thing about the horror is at its best when there's something they're trying to say about people, society, whatever. When there's or the comeuppance, the horror comeuppance is always the best.
Oh, there's the comeuppance. Yeah, it's that classic Tales from the Crypt thing where you go like, he got away with murdering his wife and now she's back.
Right,
I mean? Like it's that's that to a T. That's what this is. I mean, it's wonderful. I mean, there are definitely times like we were sitting there watching some of the takes, while they were setting up something else, and we were both like, I was just like, oh God, I feel so sorry for him because he's so miserable. Like he just nothing works. You just want to go like, oh, just fucking give up. Like but he doesn't. There's a tenacity to his stupidity in a way. I mean, or there's a like, you just keep going, kids, and it's like, no, don't. So
I mean,
and it's funny too. That's the other thing is I think good horror has a sense of humor to it as well. I mean, like science fiction, I think if you're too dry, if you're too earnest in your horror, I think you lose people. Whereas when there's a sense of humor to it, a sense of play to it, I think that's where it comes alive. And Vincenzo's got such a wonderful sense of humor about this stuff and twisted, like the things he finds funny. It's magnificent. I've actually got a screener. I was given like they're very kindly, they've given us, I'm actually going to take a photograph of it because this is where I get in trouble. Apparently they send you the screener to your Netflix account. So really? All of a sudden there's like because you watch this horror or this, and then at the bottom it says screener or something. So I'm going to take a photo of it because I've never heard of this. It adds a new section to your Netflix account with the episode that I'm allowed to see on it.
Oh, that's big time sounding. That sounds big time.
Isn't that cool? Like I was like, well, you've made it when you've got your own section on Netflix.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm gonna. I can't watch it tonight because everyone's out. But hopefully tomorrow night I can sit the family down and we can actually do a pre-screening of it, and then tantalize people with tales of what it's going to be like.
We'll see. For the rest of us, we're waiting minimum, I guess, a month. I guess
it's the minimum. Is it 23rd, 24th,
25th.
So, and they're going to do like two, like it's like they're releasing them all the way up to Halloween.
Oh, okay.
Which is really fun.
Oh, they're not binging. They're not doing the binge format.
I don't think it's a binge. I think, well, it's a partial binge. It's a healthy binge in that I think it's like 2 episodes a day or something. Or I don't know the exact schedule, but I know that it starts that day. You'll get a couple, and there's just, I mean, they got Crispin Glover in one, who I just freaking love. I've got they've got what's his name, the Harry Potter guy whose name I've forgotten for some reason.
Daniel Radcliffe.
Lovely guy. No, the redheaded kid who was
Ron Weasley guy.
Yeah, what was his name?
I only know him as Ron Weasley.
I know isn't that awful? Like, talk about typecast. No, he's on some cool series now. He's on like some other. Anyways, another. They've got all these people. I'm really excited to see what they're going to do with, and some really fun, wacky directors too. So there's going to be some really crazy stuff happening. I'm sort of, in a way, I've already lived through mine. I'm kind of almost more excited about seeing the other ones at this point.
That sounds absolutely awesome. Like I said, I want to watch it. I'll be patient though.
You must be patient, unless you get suddenly a screener section shows up on you.
Oh, that'd be amazing. If my show ever got big enough that Netflix starts screening shit for me, that'd be.
No, you mean when your show gets
when my
enough.
show, yes,
that's it.
I'll start doing all my episodes like a crown on my head. I'll be like, hey,
that's King, it. That's it. Yeah,
King exactly. Jeff traversing the stars.
Yeah, that's it. Well, I remember one of the first experiences I had with that was with Ain't It Cool News.
Oh, okay.
And they went from this sort of like this weird little website, where this nerd was this redheaded nerd talking about movies and stuff, and all of a sudden, like, we were like approaching him to ask if we could use his quote on our poster and stuff. Like, it was like awesome. He became this, I was always like, damn it, I want my own media empire. Or Nerdist is another one. Wow, like that guy. Although he's also very funny and talented. That helps too.
You got that, the Newsarama. I mean, there's a few that transcended. And this is my show. You never know. One day,
you never know. That's it. Yeah. Well, and also I think it's exciting. Like I love that this is possible now, that we can have these kind of discussions. It was amazing watching with Stargate. We were like, I can't remember, it was year 2 or 3 or something, where instead of doing a press thing, we would have these like day of podcasts, and people would come in, and you'd have all these people come in from all over the world to do their interviews, and they were flying, podcasters and YouTubers and stuff in to do the interviews. And I was like, this is what, now I'm excited. I mean, this is where it sort of opens up. There's another podcast I really like is Salty Nerds.
Oh yeah.
Who are like just obsessed with sort of film and TV and going back and looking at stuff and things. And it's just the other thing I love about it is that there's room for everybody.
Yeah.
Unlike television, where it's like, damn it, you got the show. That's it. The 8 to 9 slot. We're done. Yeah. Now with all the streamers and with all the YouTube and stuff, it's just the tide just raises all the boats. I mean, I love it.
That's what I love doing my show. I mean, the cool thing is I've had many experiences where now I watch something on TV. I'm like, as I'm watching it, I will find the guy's contact information and email them as I'm watching, going, I want to talk to that guy. And then he responds to like, yeah, let's do this interview. So I'm saying, to me, that's just so cool that I'm literally like interactive TV. I'm talking to the guy making the show as I'm watching it.
And that's the beauty of it to me. I mean, it's weird for actors though, because I know, the industry tries to get between people and their audiences. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you build up, there's like a buffer. And I understand it with people like Jason and stuff, you can't have, if everyone said hi to Jason when they wanted to, Jason wouldn't have, but for someone like me, I kind of like it because, the odd time someone comes up and says hi, that's great. I mean, and you could almost tell when it's going to happen, but the idea of being able to like have these kind of chats with people about this stuff is just like, it depends on the people, but yeah.
Oh, I agree. There's been multiple times where I have sent a press inquiry to a publicist or a manager, like, hey, Traversing Star. At the time, I was at a different podcast, I was at something called Spoiler Country, and I sent it, I want to talk to so and so, and I get like immediate feedback. They're busy, can't talk. And then like a couple of weeks later, I'll bump in, I'll find the contact of the actual celebrity, like, hey, blah blah blah. Like, oh yeah, I'll do your show. I was like, really? I was told you're not. He's like, I don't even know. I've never ever asked me. I never knew someone was even had an inquiry about me. I was like,
oh, dude, I thought that's the same thing happens with scripts. Like, so people will send you scripts, you'll never see them.
Yep,
never see them. Yeah, like, I mean, and then of course that's the other weird thing is then people will get you scripts and you can't see them. Like, I mean, because one of the other problems, of course, is if someone sends you a script and then you go and you're doing a different, like maybe just someone else makes a movie and has some similarity, then they go like, aha, we sent you a script and it's got them. So I can't read unsolicited scripts, but I can't. But so you have to have people to go through. But if they don't send you stuff, I've got the guy I've got representing me now, Ryan, he's like a nerd like me. We talk about Lego more than we talk about work. So it's great. But yeah, there's a lot of that stuff. The industry does, as I say, it's constantly, there's also so many middlemen. Yeah. And there's so many people who want to get between you and your money. I mean, who are happy to, to pitch their services and stuff. And I feel like more and more, I long for the simplicity of this kind of stuff. Like if I could start all over again, I think I'd probably be on YouTube or something. Like I love the acting. I think it's a whole other thing, but the idea of like, as a regular nerd, I just love to be doing this all the time.
Well, I just want to thank you a lot for coming on my show again. You're
whatever, man.
A great
do it after once you've seen Kevin, we'll come back and discuss.